This is Elevator People, conversations about taking ideas to the next level on behalf of visionary leaders. I'm your host, PJ Simmons, and I serve as VP of Marketing at Whiteboard, a creative agency serving visionaries seeking to make vision visible. Imagine this. You're inside a virtual cafe. You order coffee, not by tapping buttons, but by actually speaking to someone across from you, in another language, in another part of the world. But you're not nervous, you're confident, you're fluent, because you've been here before in this exact moment, practicing, preparing, and growing. Now imagine that experience is powered by a company driven not just by profit, but by purpose. A company using technology not to distract us from the world, but to connect us more deeply with it. That's the story of Immerse. And at the center of that story is Christian Rowe. Christian is the co-founder and chief growth officer of Immerse, a company that's redefining how we learn languages, connect across cultures, and scale meaningful human interaction through virtual reality. Over the last 8 years, he and his team have built something rare, a for-profit business that's deeply committed to social impact, with the numbers, strategy, and community to back it up. In our conversation, Christian opens up about that journey, from the early days of VR to now, from investor pitches to global pivots, and from vision to execution. We talk about what it means to grow a company when its growth isn't just a metric, but a mission. So whether you're a startup founder, a social impact leader, or someone just curious about where tech is headed, this one is for you. Here's my conversation with Christian Rowe. Well, Christian, thank you so much for joining me on Elevator People today. You and I have a bit of history. We've worked together in both the sense of the client agency relationship in your work with Immerse, and through that process have become friends. And it's been such a joy of just not only watching your professional growth trajectory, what you're doing at Immerse as an organization, but man, just you as a human. So I'm excited this crew to get to know you a little bit as well. But dude, your business is pretty unique in the sense that there's not a lot of folks doing it. And so, not to spill the beans, tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization that you steward right now.
Thank you, PJ. Well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of yours and love the Whiteboard team, and just grateful to be here and be part of the conversation. My name is Christian Rowe. I'm Oregon boy, born in Portland, who middle school moved to Southern California, major culture shock, but got connected to different cultures and communities, and then moved over to Orange County during college, and eventually met Quinn, our CEO, in Irvine, California, and have been starting. I just celebrated my 7-year anniversary, and this tomorrow actually is Immerse's 8-year anniversary from like when the legal papers were signed that Immerse was like a real organization. So I'm very, very fortunate to be the Chief Growth Officer at Immerse, which is just a fancy title of saying I get to work on all things growth, which is, as we'll get into in this conversation, can mean a lot of different things to different people. But the premise of our platform that we created is that there's a huge gap between people that are studying languages, if it's English or French, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, etc., and being able to fluently communicate it with confidence with real people face to face in the real world. There's a lot of apps that can help you, learn like the basics to get to level 1, but to really develop that confidence to communicate fluently, it takes a certain kind of training, a certain type of practice that's not accessible to most people. So we created an immersive corporate language training platform that allows people to jump in, have their own avatar inside of a virtual world, and be able to meet with live instructors, AI avatar coaches, peers, and community spaces, all scaffolded with curriculum and activities and tools to help people to get to what is called in the industry like a B2, C1, or even a C2 level, like advanced fluency in a language. And but the ultimate goal to cultivate human connection. That's the vision behind Immerse, and we're trying to break down barriers that have existed systemically between geographies or institutions or socioeconomic groups, ethnic groups. We're trying to use this tool to drive social impact. And it's a very unique niche way of doing it. And I'm excited how we're kind of punching up what has been the status quo up till now, and like how we're trying to change things for good. But working on that project with our team is an incredible gift that I get to do every day.
Awesome, man. When I was first introduced to you, and we began working together, um, talk about the uniqueness. For those of you who are unfamiliar with virtual reality space, imagine yourself this platform of literally being an app inside of, the metaverse. Just use that as an example. Put on a VR headset and you're literally interacting with other human beings in their avatars in various use case scenarios. I mean, maybe you're at the cafe, you're talking, you're ordering stuff, coffee, that kind of thing. Maybe you're in a classroom, maybe you're even going through, heck, the TSA pre-checkout in order to get into another country in an airport, and you're working through practicing the language in real time. And I love the concept, I love the technology, I love the innovation. And obviously, over the course of the years, you guys have been working and finding product market fit and had various pivots along the way. But before we get into the details of that, um, in startups, growth can have and mean many different things. Um, and it's postured in various different ways. This is actually constantly becoming a theme of this show on how we approach this. I would love maybe if you could unpack a little bit. How are you guys thinking about growth? What does it mean there at Immerse, and how are you guys posturing yourselves as you think about what does it look like to steward this thing called Immerse and attempt to quote unquote grow it?
The thing that also makes Immerse unique is that when Quinn, our CEO, kind of a SparkNotes version of his stories, he worked with the philanthropic family office and lived in the Middle East for 3 years in a Syrian refugee camp for serving different nonprofits post college, and was able to tap into a little bit of kind of angel investment funding from that same office to bring what was a really powerful immersive language learning experience on the ground in the Middle East, and make that possible for anybody using virtual reality technology or virtual world technology, whether that's on your computer or on your phone. So there's this initial vision to say there are people, vulnerable people groups and non-vulnerable people groups, that if they had access to this, it would change. It would open doors that weren't previously available to them. The impact would be massive. And by and large, the thing that he saw most every single day was English education being like the number one path to opportunity in for education, for getting into the workforce, etc. So um, from the get, when we originally got that $250,000 check, and we now have raised close to $19 million over the course of eight years, every single dollar that we have brought in is from what we call like social impact investors. They're people that deeply care about, it's called the double bottom line, that we can generate revenue and create incredible value that has really high multiples, and also has the ability to, in the product and service, the value that it provides to the customer, to provide really high, excellent quality and impact. Uh, but that so many of our investors, they've even committed to pledges that no matter if Immerse is acquired one day or we IPO or whatever that future is, many of them have already pledged that any cent that they get back, and hopefully it's a very high multiple, that they're just going to give away anyway, which is really, really special because in a traditional venture capital, that game, being a VC-backed company, is necessary for some. I don't encourage it for everyone, especially in traditional VC sense, where it's pretty cutthroat, and we need 50x growth in 2 years, or where you just have to, you compromise on quality. And usually you have to find shortcuts to get there, and it can be a really hard game to play. But this game that we are playing, as I use that language with my team, is social impact, and cultivating human connection is the thing that we are after. And we can measure that both in the value to our customers, to learners, the value to our corporate partners that we're providing, and also as we increase the value of the getting kind of technical of the stock options, like the equity in Immerse, that is increasing the amount that one day is also going to be given back to the communities that Quinn was, in the streets working with day in and day out. So it's really special when we're saying growth. We're like it's human connection and social impact, and we reverse engineer from there. And working inside of a startup from 2017, being in like the where VR was really kicking off. VR technology was booming when Palmer Luckey sold the Oculus brand to Facebook. That was like a big moment. COVID was a huge moment of shifting what was traditionally in-house, in-person learning experiences around the world to suddenly, Zoom and online. What does it look like to be a hybrid classroom? And a lot of different questions there. And then the metaverse and Facebook turning and rebranding to Meta, and what's a virtual worlds and how does that impact how we connect with one another? There's just AI. Oh my goodness. There's just so many things that I'm sure if we were creating a company back in 1996 during the dot-com boom, and it'd be a similar feeling of like, holy smokes, just like it feels like every year there's a new like world-changing thing we have to consider in our to grow. How do we keep up? So it's both to make social impact happen and to build a company that drives a lot of revenue and a lot of social impact with all of these major swings happening that are out of our control. It's like how do we steward the moment? How do we stay in the pocket? How do we stay true to our vision with the resources and constraints that we have, but still make something really beautiful? And I think that our team has kind of walked that line really well. And that's a huge kudos to our CEO, our head of product, Jacob Fernari, and the team that he's built, our chief learning officer, Misty Wilson, and the whole education curriculum team. They've just done an incredible job. I just get to tell, I get to tell their story and figure out how to, distribute the thing that they've made. So they're the real superheroes.
Beautiful, man. And something that you're getting at, um, where I think a lot of people, where their mind goes is when they think about social enterprise ventures, even let's call it the for-profit type ventures, there's still maybe because it's of a lack of education or understanding, but there's at least my hypothesis would be uh, a purview or a belief system that says, hey, because there's social impact, like they're not as focused on the metrics, they're not as focused on reaching objectives and reaching goals and stuff. Like almost like an expectation of an excuse to say, oh, well, you don't have to hold your feet to the fire because you're caught by the social good that you're doing. And just knowing working with you guys, y'all don't operate that way. Y'all are very much around, okay, what are the numbers? How do we get from where we are to where we want to be? How do we optimize? Where do we pivot, et cetera? I, I would love for you. How are you? Because you sit uniquely in that speed where you're taking visionary capacity, you have high belief, high vision. It's add on that the social impact element of it, but you also have like a numerical responsibility that you're stewarding and you're trying to like thread the line of translation. I know you are in the translation space, so maybe this is fitting of visionary capacity and organizational execution. How are you personally just managing that tension to make sure that you don't, I guess what I'm getting at is not over index on one side of the other, but still find success in both?
Yeah, I speaking to kind of that first point, um, I've done kind of extensive training in the past where we look at kind of break down different 501(c)(3s and look at their different tax forms and see how they break down like donations both to like the end service, the payroll of the staff, and it can numerically you can kind of see pretty quickly like, oh, a dollar that I give to this thing actually only 9 cents goes to the cause that I thought that I was giving towards. And there can be sometimes an expectation that nonprofits, as long as they're kind of preaching the good message, there's sometimes like maybe an excuse or maybe what tends to be oftentimes like a lack, what I would call excellence of what it calls to like really drive high level growth. But I also have very close friends and people who have started their nonprofits that have done that so well. And they have this, yeah, this excellent mindset, this abundant mindset, this ability that they want to operationally drive really high impact. So I think both are possible. Unfortunately, I think there's the status quo in some of the nonprofit space has that reputation, but for those who are, yeah, it is possible. But in the for-profit world that we live in, we're playing the same game that Facebook played. We're playing the same game that Stripe played. We're playing the same game where there's initial injection of cash that a visionary was able to get allotted through some kind of angel investment. And we're like, great, the clock has started. And at some point, whether there's through some kind of liquidation event or acquisition, or maybe there's just another fundraise that or an IPO one day, somehow we need to bring a return to those people who initially invest in us to even give us a job, an opportunity to make big bets and try to make the social impact we're trying to make. And but like that's the game that we're playing, just like they had. So you think of like, man, they have to operate and make hard bets. They have to be able to go after large objectives and break that down into like measurable, quantifiable, both with qualitative and quantitative data to be able to understand like, are we actually hitting that objective? How do we adjust quarter over quarter? Like really rigorous frameworks and process in order to make that really lofty vision happen is something that we do. And then the social impact is kind of for us uniquely is natively built in because we're an education platform. So if you deliver high quality products and services in the edtech space, which also isn't necessarily the status quo, unfortunately, there's impact that just happens innately in the delivery of the value that we're providing. But then also, again, if Immerse is worth X dollars and eventually it's worth Y dollars, like that return that our investors have pledged to just give away anyway is also going to have high impact. So when we talk, we're like, we are driven, we are inspired by the vulnerable communities that we're reaching, the people that are reaching new heights using Immerse and achieving more personal growth and professional growth than they have before. That's what gets us on our monthly all hands really excited and pumped up. But then the second that the all hands, it's like, and now like back to work in the systems, in the frameworks, in the strategy that we have outlaid. And so it's very much like very rigorous in the process in order to get there. We use the OKR framework, and we've done it really poorly for the first probably 3 years that we used it, trying to understand how to make the most of that. I feel like we use it really, really well now. So we have a few key big objectives and 2 to 3 key results for each of those objectives. And every single quarter, we like audit it, we change it, and then on a weekly basis, we have our team weekly tag ups, and when we have those tag ups, we're going over our vision, the 2 objectives for the quarter, and like what is the progress that we've made across the key results that helps us achieve that objective. And so it's constantly front of mind as we're working with our teams.
Yeah. I love that. So couple of things that I'm hearing there that I want to pull out and highlight. One is you talked about your all hands, those being very heavily visionary driven, coming back to the story of why we do things. There's a leader that would say vision leaks every 7 days. And so if your team isn't constantly having vision pumped into them, there's a level of go-gettedness that the motor just needs tuning every once in a while. You need an oil change. You need to refill that gas tank. And that's what visionary leadership does. But on the other side, yeah, yeah,
Again, credit to Quinn. He's and some mentorship that he's gotten from our different mentors he has and investors. They're like, we need to be like part of our job in leadership is to be annoyingly repetitive. That when it's like it is ingrained and we don't even give vision leak a space to even have the option of, so if that's at our monthly all hands, if that's in our weekly tag ups, that's in our one-on-ones that we have, sometimes every week, if not every other week with different, like with individual teammates. So it's like, because it's too easy in the different, to get in to your different silo, whether I'm doing 3D design, creating a new scene for our space or creating new curriculum for something, or I'm trying to do a marketing campaign or a go-to-market action with a different strategic partner that we're working with. Any one of those, if it's like bullseye right on the money, is if we're all working in unison in collaboration towards the vision without vision leak, that's like money, but too easy if you don't. It's like, oh, the version of that curriculum, like the outcome of that scene, the marketing campaign, it's like something happened where a lot of time and resources was put into it. In the outset, we were aligned, but the outcome that then we get 1 month later, 2 months later, 3 months later is like different. And you have to like look back and be like, wait, how did we, I thought we were aligned at the front end. And it always comes back to, oh, I
And you may have, but if you're not revisiting,
totally over and over and over. So super important, not just from
it is. And I find that even with I find that even within myself in the sense that, I mean, it is how elevator people are wired in the sense that most of them are high performers, they're self-starters, they're highly intentional. But if they aren't like channeling that high capacity, high drive towards a very clear objective with an understanding of this is the good or the impact that it's going to make. You, I don't even know the right term to explain it. Almost like an innate apathy begins to set in because your work becomes disjointed with the vision. And it's a slow leak. Like that was a great illustration you gave. It's a slow leak that if this high capacity, high drive is not directly connected to the vision, um, apathy will begin to set in and you'll begin to cut corners. Your focus, your intentionality won't be set in a meaningful way. And yeah, you look up 3 months later and you're like, oh God, what you created or delivered is totally off the mark of what we initially set out to do.
what can happen with all of the best intentions is that if I then deliver something, I just put my heart and soul into this thing, and it's like at the outer rung of the bullseye, like it's close but not quite. Like, oh, where'd that happen? Then, if there's not really clear tools to communicate, like again through the one-on-ones, weekly team tag ups, all hands, um, then there's space for like, yeah, bitterness to build, or like, do you not trust me? Like I think this is spot on with the context, constraints, opportunities that I had when I was putting effort towards this thing. And if that happens, a few different times, then it's like, okay, I don't even want to collaborate. I want to collaborate as little as possible with this team because I don't want to feel that way again, or feel like my work was insignificant or not enough or not to par. And it's all like unspoken, and they're little things. I was talking little pebble in your shoe as you're hiking, and it's like a little uncomfortable or something that wasn't quite right, but it's not enough to like reorient or like circle back and readjust. But then another one gets in your shoe and eventually it like builds up. You're like, this is just uncomfortable, and burnout happens or silos happen, or and it's that drift is real. And so we attack it and give language to it all the time. We say at Immerse that we are, in addition to our full-time job, we are all full-time gap hunters. That's is like language that we use, saying that it is our job to gift our colleagues, whether it's the people that we're reporting up to, peers, or people that we are trying to manage and lead. It is a gift when we say, hey, this is where we said we were going, and this is where something is off. Whether that was I didn't give enough context, or the skill set isn't quite up to snuff and we need some training to upskill that person, or maybe it's just like misunderstanding or interpretation through asynchronous collaboration as we're a remote team. But if we don't call out the gap, then we are giving way to that leak to happen. We're creating space for that to exist. So we always say all the time, and for our new hires, they're like, "Oh, you guys say the word gap a lot," because we're always saying, "Oh, here's a gap for me. Quick question to uncover this gap," or "Hey, I think this is a gap. Maybe it's not." But it's just helpful language. It's not you that I'm against. It's this thing that's blocking us from doing our best work, and we want to get that out of the way as quick as possible.
One tactical maybe conversation I like to have, and you highlighted this a little bit earlier, but I would probably anticipate this is one of those uh, safety nets, stop gaps that help you guys make sure that what you're working on is aligned to the vision. And you highlighted the framework of OKRs, so objectives and key results. Um, for those of you who are unfamiliar, this is a framework, to my understanding, originally derived out of Google's early days in team squad formats, where a group would have a very clear objective and then very measurable key results that they would be measured against, primarily on a 90-day kind of rolling calendar. It can fluctuate based on the need type thing. But all that to say, it's a very clear framework that keeps teams aligned, keeps individuals within those teams know what does it look like to be on track, off track, or if they're being successful or not. And then the reporting and constant conversation cadence of making sure that, everything that is being worked upon is directionally and objectively aligned. Maybe the question that I would love to have with you is, how has something like that, utilizing a system and a process like objectives and key results, and we could put some of this in the show notes of where people can find more information. But how has that helped you guys in this process of, like, maybe being a stopgap of filling those gaps, so that you don't just like, oh guys, we had a great offsite and then let's come back 90 days later and see what we all did. Like, no, you're utilizing it throughout, day by day, week by week. How does that help your team?
I'm gonna add in that plus two other frameworks real quick if I could. Uh,
Yeah.
to OKRs, we did a very poor job the first few years, especially because we didn't have John Boone, who's our like director of all things like data analytics and technology integrations and infrastructure with our backend to pull in data and track data well, clean up the data and report that data. Before having that system, we were like, yeah, I think we did pretty good last month on that thing. We should, I don't know, just try it again, change the color. Maybe we should A/B test, but it was so like gut check off the hip, and we all thought that our ideas were like pretty great. And come to realize like most of them weren't. Some of them were awesome, but a lot of them were just totally subjective, and we didn't have a true way to measure them, or we had aspirational KRs, which was a huge risk because we said, oh, part of our KRs, we're going to say, oh, we're going to do this tactic but to help execute this key strategy to drive this business outcome. We use that outcome strategy tactic language also a lot in Immerse. And in order to do that, we'll see that net dollar retention increases by X or Y, or we'll see that user engagement increases by X, knowing that we had no way to track that when we created it. We're like, but we will this quarter. And then things happen, we get to the end of the quarter and we're like, yeah, I think we did pretty good, but I can't give you a solid number. I can give you kind of an approximate. So we didn't even have a scientific way to like actually validate or invalidate if that asserted hypothesis was true. Like, was that a smart bet? Was it not a smart bet? Was it 80% a good bet? We just need to adjust this based off the data. And with like poor data, we weren't equipped to be able to make smarter decisions. So my high encouragement is if you're going to use OKRs, it can actually become oh, risky to use if you are don't have like the whole kind of theme behind OKR. The author John Doerr, who wrote a book about Measure What Matters, which is the OKR framework. His whole thing is like measure what matters, and if the thing that you're saying that you care about that matters, but you don't have the means to measure it, don't put it down as your key result. Or make sure like this next objective is to build the infrastructure to measure it. Otherwise, we can't learn scientifically and actually validate what we're doing. And sometimes that feels like I don't have time. I have to be able to, go from zero to $100 million tomorrow, and I don't have time to build that up. But you do, and it's a compounding thing. Like data is the greatest gift that you can give yourself to like make smart decisions and not go off of kind of gut check hypothesis of what we think is a good idea. So I'd say a data-driven OKRs, super important. Really great if you can measure it, not great if you don't. The other two that I'll say really quickly, Andrew Hartman is a mentor, friend of mine, and to many of the Immerse members. He created this system called Time Boss. If you want to, maybe we can add it to the show notes, but he does an incredible job, and we use his system inside of Immerse to help each person find what he calls your highest sustainable pace. So what does it mean to be able to take everything that you need to do personally to drive those key results to achieve that objective, and how do we time block stuff throughout the week? How do we create space, what he calls a whirlwind, on a daily and weekly basis to like adjust on the fly and move things around? and then be able to confidently say, at the end of this week, that's enough. And I feel good. I can actually log off and not be a workaholic or not be like tempted always at all hours of the day to check my phone. But like it's enough. And I did what I needed to, and I could step away and then come back and continue to drive with my highest sustainable pace. So his like systems are very simple but really powerful. So that helps us to keep on track because we're also not like, when can you get that done? Like, oh, maybe Thursday. I'm not quite sure. And it's just so blurry. And this makes it very concrete. I know what the measurable KR is. I know when I'm getting this done on Thursday. It's
Yeah.
and specificity and making things objective. I think is the theme I'm trying to communicate. And I have one more, but I heard if you wanted to chime in.
No, I was just saying that that in and of itself could be a whole conversation, a whole episode. It reminds me a lot of Cal Newport's work around deep thinking, deep work, some of his new stuff, slow productivity, and it's just it's crazy to think that, oh, just because technology has advanced like significantly over the last 20 years, that means we can 10, 20x our productivity. Like we're creating this stuff not to like necessarily be more productive, but to give us more focus in the meaningful things that moves the needle the most. And it like so many organizations and so many leaders have to flip their thinking in that. All right, what's the third one? Yeah.
Point. If you can't have qualitative and quantitative data to inform that decision, any AI you layer on top or any tool set or campaign, it just amplifies that inefficiency. And it becomes even harder to track down where things went wrong because you just shot that sucker across, across thousands of people or in email or across a team campaign. And so it gets really messy. It's like hard to pinpoint where the leak actually happened. So it's really important, in the words of Seth Godin, to like find your minimal viable audience and just be really tight and creating as much value, measured value to that person, and then being able to expand. And that doesn't matter if you're a venture-backed startup or bootstrapped entrepreneur, just working with the savings that you have, that you got from somebody or that was in your savings account. That still holds true. It's the fastest way uh, to grow. So I think that's super important. The last one I'll share really quickly is a good friend, John McBurney, a mentor, colleague at times when we've worked with him. He pointed me to what's called like the business canvas, and I'm happy in the show notes to include a link to this template. But for any business, there's like 6 dimensions to be able to measure product market fit. And there is like the key target audience that you're after, the problem statement, your unique and differentiated value proposition, and that's where like category design and positioning work happens. Your competitive advantage. There's an author named Helmer who talks about 7 key competitive advantages, whether that's brand or counter positioning or process power or distribution. There's a handful of them. Your go-to-market strategy, so marketing, and then what's your business model? How do you actually transact? And every single one of those in your business should have an asserted hypothesis of what you believe to be true. So we are going after at Immerse to solve this problem. I can't tell you how many times that problem statement has been refined over the course of 7 years, because we learned that actually that's the wrong target audience. That dimension changed, and so that we need to come back. And this is like our Bible. This is like our like everything, every campaign we create, every product feature that we develop, every announcement that we make or partnership we go after has to come out of an agreement with your key leaders on that canvas. And so when you have your asserted hypothesis, you also can have, it's called your risk rank, where you can say like, yeah, my target audience, we validated that. So risk 1 out of 5 is a 1. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Go to market, that's actually a 4 out of 5. I don't know if like partnerships or like advertising or go to market, that's where a great place like whiteboard comes in and like can help clarify like this is how you can bring this incredible product or service to market in a really smart, most efficient, effective way. So it gives you a road tactically to say, where should I put my energy and focus versus like, I think I should do this week. And hopefully at the end of the quarter, like you were saying, hopefully it made an impact. Like that is a bad system and you're setting yourself up for failure. So to be able to have like, this is what we're after, and we're just going to knock down the highest, riskiest thing one after the other, put that in our OKRs and execute with our highest sustainable pace with that time boss framework has been an incredibly powerful formula to make our team super, super efficient and getting things done.
1, 2, 3 punch. I love it. It is. And what I like about the business canvas is, it doesn't have to be a 50-page doc. There's a consolidated version in the lean business canvas. Yeah, which is what makes it hard. It forces you to focus. But it does. It is so valuable when, to your point, whether you're writing copy or you're making new, hey, what's the next product feature consideration that we're looking at? Like, it's a filtering mechanism. Talk about that vision execution gap. The wonderful tool to continue to put pulse checks on that as well. Um, come on now.
As when a visionary says, here's 10,000-foot view of where we're going, and hopefully that it's tied to a long-term vision. That there's something like this is the change we seek to make over the next decade. A lot of like incredibly powerful movements that's happened in technology entrepreneurship are people who thought in decades, not in years. They just are reverse engineering to like what we then do for the next quarter, but it's all working towards this grander vision. Even hopefully multiple decades would be ideal. But once you have that vision, and then that then goes down to the next rung of leaders, whether that's like department heads or directors of different divisions, they then have their own interpretation of what that vision is and how they need to make it happen inside of their department with their unique constraints, opportunities, skill sets. And so, what can happen so easily is if there isn't collaboration amongst also department leaders or team leads, that their interpretation of what the vision was is also slightly askew or a little different. And so in our case, it feels even higher stakes because we're working in virtual reality, web applications, enterprise use cases, government use cases, direct to consumer use cases. And so there's a lot of different constraints, and to provide value, we have to ensure that education, design, growth, marketing, operations are all on the same page. Because if we go 3 days without like totally talking to each other about something, it is so evident in like the tension that's created or the gaps that suddenly are unveiled. And so I think to be an elevator person, an elevator leader, is especially important for the growth role or the growth leader, growth team within an organization. But I think it's also your responsibility, if you're in my shoes watching this, or want to be one day, to ensure that also the vision that is trickling down to different departments, that you're kind of also creating unity amongst that interpreted vision to ensure that you're all together in your cohesive, collaborative go-to-market motion. Because it's easy just to get bought into a really compelling, public speaker visionary. It's hard to then interpret that, understand what that means, and execute with other people that think and operate differently than you do.
Good, man. That is great. Um, One of the things I want to pivot here just real quickly. And tomorrow, I think you said tomorrow is the official 8-year anniversary. 8-year anniversary of Immerse. Um, with your particular role, I want to highlight maybe a few inflection points that just give us the gamut over the last 8 years. You've helped Immerse scale to, I'm hoping I don't get this number wrong. Is it somewhere over like 90 countries that you guys have tapped into? God, 97 countries. What over the last 8 years, have been the inflection points for you guys that you can point back to and like, "Oh my gosh, that was a milestone moment that unlocked growth along the way."
Yeah, when it comes to geography, I think that's innate in the community that we're aiming to serve, being largely English language learners, but also Spanish and French and Portuguese, and we're working to now we have working to support Japanese and Italian and German. That's coming very soon. But people that are learning those languages live all over the world, whether that's someone who's from Brazil, whose L1 is Portuguese and they're learning Spanish or English, or expats that are moving all over the world to live and work cross-culturally and multilingually. Um, and I'd say in order to get there, we needed to serve like our beachhead clients and users super well first. And so we started with Spanish and French in the United States. And just because we were based in the United States and we wanted to have our feedback loops really close to home, so we could measure again what was working, what wasn't working, And it's been years of experimentation, trying to figure out what works. And once that works, being able to then be able to add another language then opens up that total addressable market. And additionally, we were for a long time only a virtual reality application. So if you went on MetaQuest, which is a really exciting time to be partnered with Meta right now. They're one of our premier partners, which has been really fun and a joy to work with their education team. But when we were an app, we were, I think, one of 3 education apps when we uploaded our beta app in 2018. Like there was like no one in education. It was all gaming. Eventually there was fitness, and now there's like meditation and training and all sorts of different use cases. But as exciting as that community has been, it's still limited in its total addressable market for people that owned a VR headset. And then especially for people, we found out over time, once we were able to start measuring stuff, that our average user was like the age of our user was in their 40s or 50s, which was really shocking. We thought it would just be a bunch of 20-year-olds who love technology that also aspire to be fluent one day. And it was a lot of people who've like been integrated in the world and are in their kind of second half chapter of life. They want to make it super purposeful, and they don't want to just jump on like the next kind of gimmicky app or like short fix thing. They want to invest their time in something that really works. And to serve those people, the most like fun people, users, super users in our community are, people who are like also like retired and take multiple classes every week in VR headsets. Like they totally buck the thought that some people might have of like what a VR user learning in virtuality looks like. And it is so fun to kind of buck those trends. But we were hitting ceilings both in when we were doing paid advertising and also like organic campaigns to be able to reach and maximize and convert that growing ecosystem of virtual reality headset users. So a decision we had to make is, I think we need to move, and while still maximizing the opportunity we have within this VR ecosystem, how do we also become cross-device compatible? How do we get Immerse on desktop? How do we get Immerse on mobile? And a huge part of that is our partnership with NVIDIA has made that possible, to be able to take a gaming app, because this technology didn't exist 7 years ago when we started. This is the new technology just in the past 2 years, where a VR app can connect to NVIDIA, and then that app can then be accessed across tablets and mobile devices. But it was it's called like game streaming, where you can access the same virtual world but stream it kind of from different places. And then with AI, being integrated, our partnership, both with Meta's LLM and OpenAI, it's we're just kind of opening. The community has grown as we have added new languages, opened up access across different devices, and we saw a huge jump. It was a big bet, because if we're not just a VR app, which a lot of VR apps just stay VR, like tried and true, keeps the messaging clear, like we're a VR headset type of experience. And so we've had to go through the hard work of explaining that we are part of VR. We are a premier education partner with Meta in the VR ecosystem, but we're also aren't just VR. And most people don't start in VR. They start on their phone, they start in desktop, and if they really want the most immersive experience, they move to virtual reality. So continuing to learn from our users. We do a lot of qualitative, quantitative surveys and interviews with our users to also learn like what blockers, not that we perceive that are happening, but that they are felt on the end user experience. That's also been a huge driver to make the product better. And again, in the great words of Seth Godin, that people like us do things like this. And I think people like us, being Immerse users, are growing, because they're saying we do stuff like we learn Immerse on mobile. We now learn doing these kind of social experiences on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And before, it was too clunky of a user experience to do that. And so people try it. This is cool. It's not quite there yet. And they, maybe we'll come check it back out next year. But by iterating and pushing out monthly updates, we've gotten to a point now where that word of mouth is growing. And there's true like many tribes and communities, both with corporate and individual users. And that over time has grown Immerse immensely.
Safe to say your initial plan 8 years ago, you've had quite a few inflection points and pivots along the way.
We have started 27 startups over the past 8 years, so
But I think that's fair. I mean, it is the entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial journey. I think so many times we as both leaders and high capacity elevator people, we put so much weight on ourselves, and self-image stuff around, our own performance. And there's a freedom to step into and to be a part of a group, or at least know that there's others who are coming to this realization that, wait a second, like this is purposefully supposed to be hard because it is hard, and there are no silver bullets. None of us know what we're actually doing. Some of us have some skill sets, and we have some experience, and maybe a little further down. But like, particularly in VR world, like you're trying to solve problems that didn't exist a few years ago, and I think there's a lot of freedom in that, of just like enjoying the journey more so than the destination.
For sure. I think you can probably tell by how much I'm quoting him. But Seth Godin, um, which top like books from like This Is Marketing. He has a new book called This Is Strategy, are incredible and drive a lot of this home. The stuff that I'm talking about. But one of his books is called like The Dip, and it's talked about how if there's feeling of imposter syndrome, or like, am I the right person to do this? Are we the right team to do this? Or and I think there's a feeling of like once we reach the dip, this like inflection, or we call like a compression moment, where things are really put to the test, and it kind of forces you to ask, like, do you really want it? Is the vision that you're after, the change you seek to make, really worth being resilient and in order to achieve long term? And uh, there's two types of people. The types of people that when they feel that dip, they're like, "Oof, I don't know if I'm cut out for this," and they'll go move to something else. And they probably will continue to work on things until they hit the dip, and they'll try to pivot to something else because it is really hard. And another type of person that says, "I live for the dip." Like I that 'cause the dip is where if you if we're seeing a professional athlete, or Steph Curry or LeBron James in the NBA playoffs right now. Like to be excellent, even in a pool of incredible professional athletes, to be great, for greatness to happen, it's like a few percentage of people are willing to go through the dip. So like that compression moment, the process over outcome, to like stick with it because the vision, the greatness that I'm out to achieve is worth it. Which really forces you to ask the question, is the thing that I'm trying to put all, raise money for and push, the hard question is, should you even start it? Which is a hard question that, again, Seth Godin has challenged me, and I'm reading is like, should you do this? And the cool thing is, if you then can take that, see the dip, stare at it in the face, and say, this is worth it, and we're going to go through this, it actually like builds the fire in you and the conviction. Because to say, like, I don't, our greatest competitive advantage is that we are going to exist pursuing this vision 10 years from now, where most people are going to give up, or they're going to go pursue a different use case for this technology. But we are committed to serving this underserved community that is English language learners or foreign language learners across the world. And we are convicted to that. And I think that's why Immerse is, the best in the industry and will continue to be. Not because we have all the answers, but because of the commitment we have to serve these people.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, I want to maximize our time well. A few lightning round questions for you, and we'll end on this. So, first one coming up. Just because this is your world, what's one of your favorite growth metrics to watch that's not revenue?
It's not revenue that is one of my faves. Um, Not is our win rate in our deals. We have like a really high win rate, and because of that, we have to be really clear and articulate of what our offer is, and constantly asking how can we make Immerse easier to buy for international corporations trying to use Immerse. And we can always get better at answering that question. So every week we're like, okay, we got this information and we learned there's a gap between us and customers, that Immerse is not easy to buy for this reason. And as we've gotten better and better, our win rate went from 15% to right now we're hovering at like a 67% win rate for our deals, which is huge. Amazing. So the win rate is huge. And then on a qualitative, that's qualitative metric outside of revenue, I'd say is just user testimonials and what we call like relational equity. Like how much trust is building between us and our main point of contact who's trying to run a learning and development program or a government language initiative. you can tell when things are like, they're starting to ping me on WhatsApp 7 times a day when I could barely get them to respond to an email when we first started working. Because like the relational equity is building, momentum is building. It's hard to like measure, but you can like feel it. It's like you can feel the current rushing underneath you. So feeling that relational equity is also, it probably gives me the most life, because that's a fulfillment partially in the moment of our vision of cultivating human connection. It's like happening just in the collaborative work. So love that part of the job.
It's awesome.
Thank you for listening to Elevator People. It would be an honor if you subscribed on your favorite podcast platform, and check out our agency website at whiteboard.is to help you and your team make your vision visible.